Hashem, today's Daf Yomi is Marcos Daf Gimel, Marcos 3. In today's Daf Yomi, we're going to start in the bottom of Beis and Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. The Gemara cites the position of Rabbi Akiva in the Brisa that they said in the name of Rabbi Akiva, Afim Mishalmim Al Piatzmam, that if the Eidim Zomim go to the court themselves and admit it to a different court, then they're not going to pay. So the Gemara wants to know, my time with Rabbi Akiva, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Akiva's position, who says that if the witnesses admitted in the court about their Eidim Zomamin before they were obligated by the other court, they're going to be exempt. The Savar, because Rabbi Akiva must be in the position that it's a kinasa. Rabbi Akiva must be in the position that Eidim Zomamin, the fact that they pay, is a kinas, it's a punitive damages. The kinas, we have a general principle throughout the Shas, if it's a punitive damages, if it's kinas, they're not going to pay on their own. So Amarava Teda, I'll prove to you that this is the case. Because they didn't actually do an action. I'll prove to you it's a kinas. Because no action was done as a result of their deeds. Because the person not yet been convicted. And nevertheless, they're naragin and mishalmim. They're executed and they have to pay. And so therefore we see that it's obviously a kinas. That's what Rabbah says. Amar of Nachman, I'll prove to you a different approach. Says Rav Nachman to his Chavrusa Rabbah. He says, Teda, I'll prove to you that it's a kinas. Sharim Mamon biad bailim, because the money is still in the hands of the owners. The defendant has not paid anything yet. And nevertheless, Mishalman, so it's clearly not restitution. So it must be a kinas. My Gemara says, Mainiu delo asumaisa. So the Gemara says, what does Rav Nachman say when he says the Mamon biad bailim Mishalman? It means they haven't done an action. So isn't that the same exact answer as Rav Nachman? As Rabbah. So where it says, Rabbi Nachman. Indeed, so we amend the text, the statement of Rav Nachman to say, and so too Rav Nachman says, consistent with Rabbah. Amar Yehuda Marav. He says, Eid Zomim Misham Wafi Chalko. So Eid Zomim who comes and obligates himself, who admits it, he has to pay an Eid Zomim pays to the person who the amount will feel chalko according to his portion of the testimony. So the Gemara says, what does this statement mean? My mishal will feel chalko. If you want to say that each one of the witnesses pays half, Tanina mishal shem b'mamon ve'mishal shem b'malchus. We already learned that in a brisa. In a Mishnah on Daf Hey, that the Beis Din says we divide up the money that they owe, but they each get their full share of the malchus. Now must be a case going to Itzum Chaminayu, the Mishalim Palga Day. So that if one, it must be, we're talking about a case where one of the witnesses became an Eid Zomim, that he then has to pay his share. Umi Mishalim. So the Gemara says, well, no. If only one of the witnesses became an Eid Zomim, would they really have to pay under those circumstances? But Tanya ain't Eid Zomim Mishalim Mamon Achi Azumu Shneim, that an Eid Zomim does not have to pay until both of them become Eidim Zomim. So he wouldn't have to pay under those circumstances. So Amar Rabba Ba'omer Edus Shekeri Adati. So we're talking about a case where after the two witnesses testified in the court, that one of them regrets it, and he comes to the court and he says, I gave a full testimony. And so then he only has to pay his portion. So the Gemara says, first of all, Kol Kamine, would we even allow him to do that? We have a principle, Kimat Shehikid, Shuvin Choser Magin. Once he testified, he can't go back and testify again. There must be Ella Ba'omer Anu Vuzamnu Bebezdin Poni. It's where he must be that he comes to a different court and says, we were found to be Eid Zomim in a different court. And so then he's obligated himself to pay his portion of the money. So it must be command the whole Rabbi Akiva. It must be it's not Rabbi Akiva. This mission is not Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, I'm right. I'm a Shalom Piatzmo. And we're saying that our Mishnah is not consistent with Rabbi Akiva. That can't be the case because Rabbi Akiva says he doesn't pay on his own. So it must be that we want to have Rav's position work with Rabbi Akiva. We say, but Omari anu v'zanu bezin ploni v'chuyavnu mamon. And so it must be that he comes to the court and he says, we testified in a different court and they found us guilty and they obligated us to pay. And then Rabbi Akiva would admit that since he's already obligated to pay, then he's not going to be exempt. And you might have thought, you might have said, well, since to his friend he's not obligated, he's also not obligated, Kamashmo, and he's obligated. So that takes us to the end of the first Mishnah, and now we're up to the next Mishnah. Now comes along the even on as Ishponi Shagiris as Ishto. Well, Suvasa. They say we testify that this man has divorced his wife and he has not paid her the ksuva. So if he says it's possible that when he says he didn't pay the ksuva, it's possible that tomorrow the husband will divorce his wife or he'll die and he'll have to give her the ksuva. And so therefore, he wasn't actually, these false witnesses weren't actually costing him any money. So if that's the case, how do we evaluate what he owes? We evaluate how much would a person be willing to pay for the ksuva of this wife on the idea that if the woman will be divorced or widowed, that the purchaser can take the money from the husband. And if he dies, the husband will inherit her. So how much would he pay? How much is the value, the street value of the ksuba at that point? And that's what he tried to take away from him. So the Gemara says, Ketzad Shaman, how do we evaluate the money? So Amar of Chizda, meaning to say, so there's two ways how to evaluate. Rav Chizda says we evaluate in the husband, meaning to say the witnesses would need to pay to the husband the value that he could have taken by selling the value of the woman's ksuva at that point. The value that the woman could have made by selling the ksuva at that point. Amar Papa, Be'isha b'ksuvasa. Rav Papa says it's like Rabbi Nelson that we evaluated by the woman. However, but we don't evaluate that they want to cause the husband to pay the ksuba and not the value that they wanted to, and not the value of the next same move. So all they evaluate is the ksuba that she would have lost. Now we come up to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah says, so if the people come along and they say, we testify to this person that we're obligated to pay his friend 1,000 zuz that he borrowed from him on the condition that he will pay from now until 30 days. And he says from now until 10 years. So basically, we evaluate what is the value of not having to pay that loan versus 30 days versus 10 years. And that's what they'd have to pay. So the Gemara says, if you says the name Shmuel, somebody lends money to his friend for 10 years, the sabbatical year will cancel it. And so therefore he doesn't have to return the loan. So and even though right now in the year of the sabbatical year, the person doesn't have to pay it back, in the end, he will have to pay him back. And so Yigos is to oppress him. So therefore, we're saying the end of 10 years, he's going to oppress him to the sabbatical year cancels it. The Master of Kahana, Omden Kama Adam wrote to you Elves Biado. But what about our Mishnah? We said we evaluate how much it's worth to pay up until the 10 years that amount. He should have to pay him everything. He shouldn't have to pay him anything. Meaning to say you should pay him everything because he's going to lose the money. So Amarava, and now we're talking about a case where he lent the money on a collateral and he gave it to the court. And as we learned in the Mishnah, and Shvius now, Malva Mashkol, Moses Charles based in Amish Mikan. The sabbatical year doesn't cancel under those circumstances. Then we say the sabbatical year does not cancel it. Even though eventually it'll come to low egos, right now it's not there. And so therefore he doesn't have the sabbatical year doesn't cancel it. So I'm Kahana. We also learned this. We see how much will be in his hands, and he'll have to pay either from now for 30 days or now until 10 years. He should have to pay him everything. So no, it's talking about where he lent it on a collateral. The this is not clear, it doesn't cancel on the other circumstance. Says the Gemara, Amar, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the sabbatical year. If a person says, I'm lending you money on the condition the sabbatical year will not cancel it, doesn't work. Sabbatical year will cancel it. So let's say Shmuel's on the position that you can't stipulate against the Torah. If you make a condition against the Torah, it doesn't work. Gemara says, but didn't we learn and I'm going to sell you this object on the condition you can't claim that I'm raising price gouging or price fraud? Rav says that he can still claim back the money. You can't claim that I return back the extra. And Rav says it doesn't work with Shmuel Amar. That the stipulation is effective. So the Gemara says, yeah, but we learned about that. But we learned about that. Amarabanan with the demon partially. Mine de Shmuel. Amanash in Allah is just the opposite of what we thought it meant. Ein lo ona, meaning to say, since he made the condition, you don't have ona, then we're going to say, then under those circumstances, on the condition that you won't make a claim from me, then he can't have a claim. But if he says Amana she'ein bo ona, on the condition that there is no ona, that there is no price fraud, hare yesh bo ona, then there is ona. If he says on the condition that the sabbatical year will not cancel it, the sabbatical year does not cancel it. But but on the condition that Shvius does not cancel it, well then Shvius Meshamto, then sabbatical year does cancel it. So there, it all depends how you worded it. Another law with respect to a loan on the sabbatical year, or respect to loans. Tana, we learned in the Braita, Malvas Chaver Stam Ein Rishai Latovo. If you lend your friend money without specifying when the loan is due, you're not allowed to claim. You're not allowed to make the claim less than 30 days. That's only if it's by a contract. You'll have an inish the tarach because of star, but people don't work to write a contract unless it's going to be 30 days. Of a malva parallel, but if it's an oral loan, you can make the claim. We don't say it's 30 days. You can make the claim for the money immediately. Amar way Rav. So Rav says, Hachi Amar Habibi, this is what my uncle Rabbi Fuya said, whether it's a loan by a contract or orally, you can't make the claim until it's 30 days. You can't ask your money back. We have a brisa that supports the position of Rav. Amar Yishmael Rav Matana. Yishmael says to Rav Matana, Lo titev akarayach, don't sit down, stand on your legs, until you explain this teaching to me. Where do the rabbis know? If you make a claim from your friend, you can't collect it unless it's 30 days. He says, I'll tell it to you. The proof says Ramas Shmuel. It says the seventh year is coming close to the year of the sabbatical. For the fact that it says the seventh year is coming close, I know it's the year of the sabbatical. Why does it say the year of the sabbatical? To tell you, there's another circumstance that a person can't make the claim. The Ezazu, this is a person who makes the claim from his money, from his friend. He can't try to collect the claim if it's less than 30 days. That's a source for this idea. Like we learned in another context, 30 days in a year is considered like the year. And this is in the context. So the Gemara says, the Gemara now brings another law that Rabbi Yehuda says with respect to fixing the utensil on Shabbos. But why are we bringing this here? Because since Rabbi Yehuda said with respect to a loan of 10 years and Rabbi Gana challenged him, the Gemara now brings another case, several other cases that Rabbi Yehuda said and Rabbi Gana challenged. So let's say you have a garment and you make a hole for the neck on Shabbos. That's going to be a sin offering because you fixed the utensil. So how is this different than opening a bottle on Shabbos that a person can, you have to take the cover off the bottle to open it, even though in fact you're making utensil. He says the bottle is not connected to the bottle is not connected to the cover, but in this case is. Okay, so basically we'll stop here. This is today's daf, and God willing, tomorrow morning we'll pick up where we left off, so we can have all the dafim done before Pesach. A big shkoyach to everyone before shkoyach.